Welcome to Advocacy and Hope. I am Amy Post. I'm your host this morning. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And, I haven't been on the Facebook or Instagram a lot recently. There's just been a lot going on. I think life just kind of gets us sometimes. It got me over the holidays, and I'm really excited to kind of reinvigorate and have some great guests on this year. Advocacy and Hope was started about almost a year and a half ago, really coming out of just some difficult times in my life. And I wrote my first book last May, Out of the Gray into the Light. And it really spurred me to start something that gave positivity, engagement, relatability, and where we could really just be on a stage no matter who we were and tell our story and hopefully help people. So that's what we do. That's what we're going to do again this year. And I really want this to be very focused. So those that are on Facebook and Instagram, put in questions, whatever you want, but I can't wait to get started today. So today, my guest is Abigail Gagnon. She is just a cool individual that I was referred to by Rena Friedman. I had Rena on my podcast. I was on hers. She is the producer of Let's Call Daddy and just has a really, really cool following on her podcast. But she felt that Abigail and I would mesh well, and kind of just hearing bits and pieces of her story. Super excited to have her on. So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about challenges. We're going to talk about health, chronic health specifically. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of her purpose and what she's developed. I'm really excited to hear about her ministry, but I think this couldn't be a better start to the year of really talking about especially chronic illnesses and our health and what we can do and things that maybe will give us purpose and move us forward. So Abigail, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Super excited to have you on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, Rena is awesome. I've been on her podcast and she was on mine as well. So that's really awesome that you were too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give the audience a little background on who you are, and let's go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Abigail and I am married and I am in my early 30s. And I have been dealing with chronic health issues for a very long time. I was in food service for a while, almost 10 years, absolutely loved it. And during that time, I had different issues, like back pain, constant back pain, had to wear a brace when I was working. I also have knee issues, so I had to tape my knees a lot while I was working, and different things like that I still dealt with while I was in food service. But I was able to push through for the most part. I very, very rarely called out. And like, even if I was slower, like I would get kicked out more often than I would leave. Like there were several times where I would tell my boss, like, hey, like I, just fainted in the bathroom or this happened and I'm now going to just stand here and cut strawberries. And he'd be like, no, mm-hmm. You're going home and stuff like that. So I was able to push through, but then it got to the point where I started what I thought was just getting the stomach bug all of a sudden, like frequently. And I hardly ever had that as a child, never really had that in my life. I thought this is very strange. I don't understand, but I was also working at a pub as well. And so I thought, well, maybe, just people that are coming in, like I'm not just back in the kitchen. Like, I don't know. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I had to call out quite a bit and it was really, really hard for me, not knowing what was going on. And I have dealt with migraines like ever since I started my cycle, but it was normally like around my cycle. And sometimes I'd get like ice pick headaches, like around my eyebrows, but I didn't know that was like what it was. It would just happen all of a sudden sometimes. And all that to say, I didn't realize at the time that migraines could be silent and that you could have like all the symptoms of a migraine and not have the head pain. And so that's what I was experiencing, but it took a very long time to get diagnosed. It started back in 2016 was when it started to get worse, and then it slowly got worse, and it took until 2018, end of 2018, early 2019, before they diagnosed me and figured out, like, I had many different doctors, and they were finally like, all of this is migraine related. And I was finally able to get different treatment and different things, and finally was able to, I still am high on the Midas scale for migraines, but I'm able to function a lot better than I used to. And that kind of steered my life in a different direction because I was no longer able to work. I thought at the time, like, hey, I'm just going to switch and I'm going to work at a contact center. So I worked at a contact center for a couple years, but not knowing that it was migraines, I didn't know, like, being on a computer all day and being around like fluorescent lights and also getting yelled at by people at a bank. Like, none of this is very good for migraines, but I didn't know
Mhm.
that's what it was. So I just thought, maybe I just need to do something that's less physical, and where I'm not around a ton of different people and I'm kind of like just in my own little thing. And so that was really hard to start a new job. And because of the brain fog, like, I really, really struggled with remembering things as I was being trained. And it made me feel like super stupid. And it was really hard because I've always been the type that when I would start a new job, like, that always be like, you pick this up so fast. And just, there was just a lot going on. And so, like I said, now I don't do food service and I don't work at a contact center, and I just stay home, because my health, even though it's more stable, it's still unpredictable enough and I still feel not great all the time. So it's not like there isn't something that I could do that would really work around my inconsistent health. So
Mhm.
that is kind of like a roundabout way to answer that
Yeah.
question. Sorry.
I think a lot of people can relate because there's so many health issues, and I think so many go undiagnosed for so long, and we suffer, and sometimes we suffer in silence, and we don't understand it. We think it's our fault, or someone tells us, it's in your head, or they don't know, or you just get maybe pawned off on different physicians to try to figure it out, and that right there can take a huge toll on us. And I
Yeah,
think there's
it
just
was
so
very
much
hard.
stress involved. And I think, how did you, oh my gosh, I mean, it's stressful enough to have all this going on, but then how did you find the strength and the courage to, switch careers and switch, what you were doing? Was it just, kind of this thought process of, well, this part of my life is over and I need to search for something else? Or kind of what happened in those moments that your health was so bad and you were having to probably switch careers?
It was very difficult, especially since the job that I worked at, I had been there for a long time. Well, the main job. I worked at various different restaurants, but I was mainly at a conference center and camp. And I lived there from June to generally October every year. And then I also worked there year round during the conference season, but I lived there for the summer. And so that place became like my home and these people, my family, and I had been there for years. And I'm pretty sure I still am the longest person that's ever worked there year round. Because typically people will just go and work in the summer or they'll work during conference season. But besides like the head chef or whatever, like, nobody stays that long. And even now, I think like the person after me that had been there the longest was 5 years, and I was there for 7. So it was a long time that I was there. And without getting too much into it, I had a lot of stuff in my childhood and home life before. So like having that safe space where I felt like I had a purpose and I felt loved and like I could heal certain things that I needed to heal. It was really, really hard for me to make that switch. And I think that that also contributed to my health, like the decline, because some of it, obviously was mental as well. Looking back at the time, I contributed most of my mental health to just not having answers. But I think a lot of it also had to do with switching careers. And I really didn't want to. It was mainly just, this isn't working. And if I have to keep calling out of work, like, one, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. And two, like, I didn't want to have my memories of the place that like kind of saved my life in many senses, like it go down the toilet because I just had to keep calling out and then severing these relationships. And like, I don't know, I didn't want that to be my end there. I wanted to end where I still like, I don't know. I wanted to leave on good terms, I guess. And not to say that people didn't believe me, but I didn't have answers. So like they didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't know what was going on with me. And, you know, I don't know.
Mhm. So then what happened once you started changing careers, or you walked away from that career? Did your health immediately get better, or kind of what did that look like?
So it got worse, partly because of being, I think, on computers, trying to learn a bunch of new stuff. Like all of that, like I said, at the time, I didn't know it was migraines. So I didn't know, like, obviously that's going to make it worse. If I knew it was migraines, I would not have chosen that as like a career switch. Um, and then also driving, like I had a longer commute and driving with like turning my head and like just it was so bad. I had to pull over on the side of the road a lot and throw up. Like I should not have been driving a lot of the times that I did. And there were a lot of times where I'd go in because I didn't want to call out and I would mute people while I was on the phone, puke in my bucket at my desk, and then after the call, take it, throw it away. And it was really difficult because I was like, well, I can't not work. I just started this job. Then I ended up getting put on FMLA because people started realizing, and I also fainted at work in front of my boss. And then I was on short-term disability, and then I was not I couldn't qualify for long-term disability because I worked too many hours, and even with doctor's notes and stuff, like they wouldn't qualify me because they're like, oh, well, you worked this many hours, you went in, you're not as sick as like you're saying you are. And I'm like, you have no idea. Like I should not have been working. I should not have been
Mhm.
driving. It was not safe, but I did it because I didn't really have any other choice, I felt like at the time. And so that was really hard because it's like I obviously wouldn't have continued working. I would have, called out more if I had known that that was going to cause problems after the fact, but I didn't know obviously what I didn't know. So,
Yeah, and I think that in society today, there's just little humility, there's little understanding. I mean, what were you supposed to do? And what, for those that are listening, there's so many people out there can relate of, well, what do you do? So to be believable, you have to completely be doing nothing and act like it has taken over your entire life, even though it has taken over your entire life, but yet you're pushing through with that determination and that courage, trying to just make sure that you get a paycheck, you can pay your bills. I mean, just go on with life. And I think it's so difficult because then you run into those hurdles of, like you said,
mhm.
well, you worked this many hours, so we're not going to do this. We're not going to do long-term disability. It's so sad that that's how our society is, because there's not a lot of opportunity to just be able to lie down and do nothing. I mean, I found that out when my daughter was diagnosed with malignant liver cancer at age 3. I'm like, you have to keep going. We had bills to pay. Just you can't just let your life just fall into just a crumbled mess. You have to get
Mhm.
back up, but yet you need a little help. So what did you do in those moments of then not being able to find kind of the direction that you needed there?
So I honestly, my mental health was not good at that point. It was really not great. And when I wasn't working, when I was on short-term disability and FMLA, I spent a lot of time in bed, not only because I didn't feel good because I was so dizzy and I was either, I couldn't really eat, I couldn't hold like any food down. Like it was so bad. I had very minimal food that my body could tolerate. And I wasn't sleeping because of how dizzy I was. And so I did get very depressed because I didn't have answers. And I am very much the type of person that, like I said, I didn't really call out. I felt like I always had to be doing stuff to be worth something to some degree. And I think that that is a big thing in society. And that's something that I'm retraining myself to not think that way. But that's kind of how it felt like, well,
Yeah.
what's my purpose? Like, what am I supposed to do now? Like,
Mhm.
I'm just laying in bed and, no one's going to want to date me. No one's going to want to, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, And then after several months of that and going to doctor's appointments and not really getting much help, like they were like, oh, well, it must be like a crystal in your ear. It must just be vertigo. We're going to do PT and all this stuff. And like that didn't work because I mean, it kind of did a little bit, but not because that wasn't the problem. And
Yeah.
so eventually I decided I'm going to try a trial of BetterHelp. And so I did. I think I did it for 2 months, I think was the trial at the time. I don't know. They had some deal that it was like 1 or 2 months. So I did that. And the therapist, I can't remember her name, but she was really awesome. And she, told me, hey, like, yes, you can't do as much as you want to do. Yes, you're home a lot of the time. But like, what about like working and doing all this stuff like helped you feel like you had a purpose? Like what about it? And I said, well, some of it was, having somewhere to be, having goals, having, things that I wanted to do in my career or whatever. And she's like, okay, well, you may not be able to do any of that. And even though you're home, have still a morning routine. Like even if you can't get up at the same time every day because you don't feel good, when you do wake up, don't just stay in bed to start with. Like get up, eat what you can if you feel up to it, take a shower if you're not too dizzy, whatever it is. And I'm a Christian. And so she's like, do devotional time. Even if you can't read the Bible, maybe listen to a sermon, even if you don't get a lot out of it because you're not feeling well, like just go through the motions to
Yeah.
do something. And then if after all of that, like after like one or, three things that you do, all you do is stay in bed and try and sleep because you don't feel good, like at least you had something that you could check off your list. And
Mhm.
that was really, really helpful for me
Yeah.
because I was able then to have some sort of purpose. And then after I kind of got a little bit out of that rut, I had a group on Facebook that I had started years before. And I decided to invite some other ladies to it. And then they invited ladies. And then that group like grew overnight. And then it became multiple groups on Facebook and many, many messenger support groups. And now we do Bible studies and book studies over on Marco Polo, and we do multiple, Zoom hangout calls with ladies over the year and different things like that. And that really helped a lot to have like goals and have other people that I could surround myself with, even if it was virtually.
Mhm.
Because I was so used to for years being around people all the time. I'm very extroverted. And so to that was another piece of it as well, is like being home. And even though I had a roommate, I was felt so sick that I basically was in my bedroom most of the time and didn't feel up to socializing. And so that kind of also helped because then I was able to have, a little bit of a morning routine and then have something that I was doing to help other people. And I think that that's one thing that I try and still do on my worst days is even if I don't feel up to doing anything, like maybe somebody comes to mind and I message them and say, how are you doing? And, that could make a big difference in their life. And it also allows me to be able to be there for other people, even if I can't do much else.
Mm. Yeah, I think a few things you said were so important. I mean, the purpose just needs to be on like a sticky note on, people's mirror and make sure that they're remembering that they do have a purpose, no matter, what their health looks like, no matter what they're able to, give back to society, whatever you're going through at that time. I think that's extremely important because I think people lose hope. It's really easy to lose hope because you lose your health, you lose the ability to continue to do what you were doing before, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe people don't want to be around you, or you're not able to find the help that you want. I mean, that can escalate and spiral, and I think it does so quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
it obviously sounds like the group of people or groups of people that you found and started surrounding yourself with were really, I mean, monumental and very pivotal point in your life of being able to continue to keep going, because you could have just stayed in bed, all
Mm-hmm.
morning. You could have just lost all hope. You could have just pushed everybody away. What
Mm-hmm.
was that that really allowed you to move forward? Was it, I mean, maybe God, your faith, or was it your gut? I mean, what was that?
I feel like it was kind of a combination of both.
Mhm.
Years before, when I was 19, I wanted to take my life. And when I got to that place when I was really sick, I was like, I can feel myself getting to the point where I don't want to lose all hope. I don't want to get to that place. Like, I was there and there was so much more that I found that I could live for and people. And I was able to surround myself with people. I was able to grow. I was able to make memories. And so, because I feel like since I had that really, really low point and then had those years that, yes, obviously there was hard times, but that I was able to have that to look back on and go, you grew so much. Like, you worked through stuff, you healed from stuff, you have all these good memories. Like, that can happen for you again. That I think that that was kind of also like, okay, you need to pull yourself up. And even if you physically can't do what you want to do, like, make what you can do work. Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in, oh, I can't do what I used to do. And like I said, I have to you before this that I have the word purpose tattooed on my shoulder. And with the word purpose, I have the logos of the camp I worked at because it helped give me purpose. It helped save my life in many ways. And I had to realize that just because that was my purpose then doesn't mean I don't have purpose now. Like, our purpose shifts. And now a big part of my purpose is, being a wife. I also host a podcast, and I run the ministry. I volunteer for my church. Like, there's so much that can bring me purpose, and it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to also be this big grand thing. Like, most of it I do from home and a lot of it is online. But I think also with that, I've also been trying to shift my focus and reminding myself that, like, doing more can't add to my value, and so doing less can't take away from it. And so, like, I just need to realize that. And even though some days I can't do everything even from my bed that I want to do, I need to realize that that's okay. And I've gotten to a place where it's a lot better in that area. But this year, I want to focus a lot on as well, not only the physical aspect of doing more can't add to my value, but also growing. Like, not to say that I want to grow and I don't want to make changes within my healing journey, but I also think that sometimes we can get so stuck in, oh, well, I need to become better. I need to do this. I need to read the most self-help books I can. I need to be better than I was yesterday. And I think that I've kind of gotten in that, because if I physically can't do something, I feel like, oh, well, now I have to be like, I don't know, excavating all the bad stuff inside so that I can become better. And it's like, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to constantly be doing something inwardly, outwardly, physically to matter. And so my word for this year is known, because I'm trying to remind myself that I'm known and I'm loved, not only by God, but I can also, love me. My husband loves me. There are friends that I know that have seen me at my worst and also at some of my best moments. And I don't need to do anything to earn that love, because it was there when I was at my lowest points. And so that is something that I'm really trying to work on, and continue to, um, I don't know, live it out, I guess, versus just knowing it in my head.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting. Of everyone that I talk to, it's so crazy where, God has a purpose for us. I mean, I always try to tell on most of my podcasts, if I can, numerous times. I mean, what is happening to us is supposed to happen, whether it's good, bad, or the other. It's what we learn, coming through it. And I've encountered, a few people here and there that, I couldn't reach them. I wasn't allowing them to understand that, out of sometimes some really traumatic, PTSD, just traumatizing, fearful events, that if we just look on the positive side and try to sit back and listen to what God is trying to tell us, that there is something so incredible around the corner. You just have to be willing to be patient, wait for it, see what's possible. But it's so amazing that I think that you had this ability to totally get out of your comfort zone, lose something or a couple of things, you lost your health, but also your job that really gave you what you felt at that time was value and purpose. And now look at your life. And we haven't even gotten into kind of what it looks like. But I mean, you're one of those amazing people that I think that people can get such energy and such, I mean, opportunity to grow and know that they aren't alone. I just applaud you in everything that you've done. So I can't wait to hear more, but I love that it was purpose and now it's, to matter, but it's be known. And I think that's so cool. So talk us through kind of then what happens next after you've kind of had these epiphanies and things that you're wanting to do. Tell us about kind of what came first. Did you create the podcast, get into the ministries, or did it all kind of come at one time? What did that look like?
So it all happened really slow. The ministry that I founded, and it kind of grew over time. So I had a women's group, and that like basically exploded overnight after I invited some women, and then they invited women. And I was like, oh my goodness, now I need a team to help me. Like I can't,
Mhm.
do this, especially with my health. And then it slowly became other groups. And I honestly don't know at this point what the order of everything was because we have so much. We've got three main groups, one for men and women, one for men, one for women, and then we have some various other ones like for singles and married people and a healthy living one and different things like that. And then we also have many messenger support groups as well. We have some that are just for chatting about anything and everything that people, just want to share. We've got a war room for people to share their prayer requests and their praises. We have a Bible study. We're currently reading through the Bible in 4 years. We have different ones for like mental health, PTSD/CPTSD. We have suicide prevention, like all these different things that slowly happened. Mainly because like people would post in the group and they would, be sharing their stories and other people would be like, hey, I also struggle with this. And so then I kind of was like, hey, like you want this community, like, yes, you can share in the group to everybody. But I also think like having that small, smaller, more private place to be able to do that. So then the messenger support groups came to be. And then I am a big Marco Polo user. I don't know if you've heard of that app, but I am also a Marco Polo ambassador now. It's a video chat app. So you send videos back and forth. You can be as long, as short as you want. It's free, but there's also a plus version. At the time, it was just the free version when I started. And I was like, hey, I really want to do like a book study with people. But with my health, I was like, I don't know if I can commit to every Friday to host a book study at 5 p.m. We also have people from all over the world. We've got people South Africa, Europe, Australia, like everywhere, just everywhere in the groups and stuff and on the team. So I was like, okay, well, how can I do this so that we can all do it? And so I started doing it on Marco Polo. So we have a chat on there and we discuss books. We normally start 3 a year, but we normally complete 2, depending on how long the books are. And then we do a chapter per week. And so you can share your thoughts on that chapter. But if you have to double up, that's totally fine. It's very, very lax. I just tell people like, don't jump ahead because I don't want it to feel rushed and be too like out of the order. But we've been doing that for 5-6 years now. And we've done lots of different books. It's been really, really nice to be able to share our thoughts on different books. There have been some that people haven't participated as much and mainly just listen to my thoughts, kind of like a podcast. But it's also allowed me to be able to read the book and then reread different sections of the book. And so I feel like it's like helped me to internalize more of it because I'm not only reading it for myself, but then also reiterating certain things. And so, yeah, so we've got tons of different things with that. And then within that time, that was 2019 when that kind of snowball, like the snowball of that started. And then around the same time, I was not able to really go to church in person because I couldn't really drive because of my health. And I also didn't feel up to going. So I started attending Elevation Church online. And then they mention on most of the services, like, hey, you can volunteer. So I started joining different groups and stuff. And then I was in, at the time, we had state groups, and I was the one that was participating the most, like with responding to people's comments and answering their questions. And so the person that was running the group was like, hey, do you want to run this group? Because you are more active than I am, I feel like, in this, with answering people's questions and, praying for them and whatever. And you're actually in New Hampshire, so it makes more sense for you to do this than for me to do it. So then I started taking over that. And then I've done various other things. I've helped run our pastor's page, one of our elevation, I think it was elevation worship I did on Instagram, like all different kinds of things. I've posted in our big giant all around the world group and different things like that. So that has also really helped with having purpose, because not only am I participating on Sundays, but I'm also then, volunteering and helping and learning about like different things like that. And then the podcast started about a year and a half ago. And that was because a lot of people kept telling me, like, hey, you have a really good podcast voice, which I don't really like my voice, but I was like, okay. And then they were like, yeah, you have a really good voice for a podcast. You give great advice. You have a great story. Like, you should have a podcast, or you should do a vlog. And at first I was going to do a vlog. But then I was like, I don't always feel well enough to want to sit in front of a camera. And also with like migraines, I don't want to have to be staring at a screen all the time. And so I decided to do a podcast instead. And I had an idea for like doing a podcast. I didn't want it to be about necessarily just one thing all the time, but I kind of came up with some words that I wanted it to kind of center around, etc. And then I started that. I created my account, and then I literally like recorded a couple episodes and pushed them out immediately. Cause I was like, if I don't now, I'm going to like second guess myself, and that's just not going to happen. And most of my episodes are with guests. But the first season had a lot of solo episodes because I was sharing a lot about like who I am and what I do and all this stuff. And now I have a couple solo episodes here and there, but it's mainly with guests. And I have an episode out every week. And it's been really, really nice to kind of have that purpose and to be able to talk to people, have them share their stories. And I feel like it kind of incorporates a lot of what I've done in other areas, like connecting people with people. Like, I know some people like, hey, I know people that are struggling with this. I don't know much about this, but I can find someone that I can talk to and I can ask questions, put out a podcast episode, and anyone else that I know that struggles with it later, I can say, hey, here you go. Here's this podcast episode that I recorded with this person. I think this could be really helpful for you. And then I also love, chatting with people. It's been really, really awesome to learn people's stories and hear what they have to share. And I've really, really enjoyed being able to have that. And I've been able to record around my life, and then also kind of around my health. I haven't had to reschedule too many because I have figured out, like, if I record in batches for a couple months, and then I have backed up stuff, that I can then put that out. And it's been really helpful to still be able to mainly put out stuff consistently every single week, but also allow myself to have that time to rest, enjoy life, and when I can, and not feel like it's become a chore, if that makes any sense. Because I feel like I probably would have burned out sooner had I not done that. But I have 113 episodes out at this point. And I think what I'm going to do the next season is maybe have them come out every other week instead, just so that during the summer I don't have to record as much, but we'll see. But either way, that kind of is all that I've done and the timeline of when it happened.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, because I don't know if you look back and ever think, if I wouldn't have become sick, what would my life look like,
Mm-hmm.
and I never liked doing those what ifs, and, but I still find myself, doing those what ifs, because, we're in that situation of with, my daughter. I always thought of like, what would my life look like? Would I have been able to feel like I found a purpose and value, and that I could pass, experiences on to other people? And I think with what you've done, you're so relatable, and people can honestly feel so much more comfortable with, I think, those that have been through what they have been through. And I know that that sounds so simplistic,
Mhm.
but we go to find counselors or some sort of help, and I think sometimes we don't always find the best match, if that
Mhm.
person hasn't been through what we've been through, or something like that. So I think just what you've developed and how many different groups you've developed and what that looks like is so cool, because people are just searching for, I think, one, they're searching for answers, but also I think they're just searching for the compatibility and relatability, because it's hard to continue to be sick or be in those situations where that's kind of all that consumes you in your life. And
Mhm.
talking about it, or people ask you how you are and you have to say, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm good, but when you aren't, and then just searching for those groups. So I can only imagine you have some incredible stories of people that you have met and what that has looked like probably for you, and how that's felt in being able to bring them into a group or help them. Do you have a few stories that really stand out in your mind over the last several years that are just monumental to you in your mind?
Um, I don't know if there's a lot of people that have come to me and been
Mhm.
like, hey, if it weren't for these groups, like I would not be as strong in my faith. Or there's a couple of people that have told me that they don't know if they would be living anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that means the most to me because I have been there and I had people in my life at the time in person that were able to be there and be that
Mhm.
those people for me. And so it's just really neat. Like even if it's not me, that's the reason that they feel that way, it's other people. Like I helped facilitate them meeting the people that they met, and that's I think enough. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to change the world and we have to be the
Yeah.
one that's doing all the impacting. And I think sometimes even just making those connections,
Mhm.
just that small piece, I think when we can come to just accept that we don't have to be the one to save everybody, like we
Yeah.
can just be the facilitator. I think that that
Mhm.
can bring a lot of peace. But it is very interesting sometimes to think about, like, if I hadn't been sick, like, and that is one thing that I've said over the years, to multiple people, that while I'm not grateful for my chronic illness in many ways, and it's very, very hard, it's really hard when people will ask me, like you said, like, how am I doing? I never feel good, but I can't always be like, yep, I feel like crap today, because
Mhm.
I would never say that I feel good. Like, I
Mhm.
normally, instead of saying, I feel good, bad, I normally say, I feel like my version of good today, or I
Mhm.
feel like, I feel pretty, my version of not great today. Um,
Mhm.
because I feel like that kind of helps. Even if they don't understand it, they can kind of understand, like, hey, she still doesn't feel good, but she's here. And I think that that is one thing that I don't want to say the healthier I've gotten, but the more I've been able to manage my symptoms. It's sometimes hard. Not that I want to be as miserable as I was years ago, of course not. But sometimes it can be hard because I don't look as sick as I did. I've, put on more weight because I'm able to hold my food down for the majority of the time. Like, and there's certain things that I look healthier. I'm able to do more. The last couple of years, I've finally been able to read again for fun, which I wasn't able to do for a long time because of how shaky I was
Wow.
and just how, dizzy I was. And that was really, really hard for me because I love to read. But people may
Mhm.
look at that and then, like, oh, she's laying down on her dock and she's reading, and, she's just living the life. She doesn't have to work, and like think that I'm just trying to live off my husband or something. And I've had people comment that or tell me, well, you must not be as sick as you say you are. And it's like, you have
Mhm.
no idea. I spent the
Mhm.
morning puking
Mhm.
and feeling
Mhm.
like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything. And I decided, now that I'm feeling a little bit better after I took meds and after I've eaten some food, I want to go enjoy the sunshine. I only read 10 pages and then I felt too sick, but I laid in the sunshine. So, like,
Mhm.
just because I may have taken a picture and been like enjoying the sunshine, you don't know 10 minutes later, I wasn't able to read anymore because I was too sick. Like, that doesn't
Mhm.
mean anything. And that is one thing with social media that I feel like can be
Yeah.
very hard. And one reason why I love having the podcast and the ministry and stuff, because I feel like it brings more realness to it. And not that I'm fake on my Facebook. I normally try and be very vulnerable and not share like cookie cutter things and just positivity. I try and like mix in the positive into the hard.
Mhm.
But I think that that's one thing with social media as a whole that can be really hard is because people just see highlights of people's life. And then especially chronic illness people, like I said, you could take a picture and feel cute and then have to go lie on the couch because, you know, you fainted or something.
Mhm.
And that I think can be very frustrating. But on the flip side of that, like I said, there are moments where I am grateful for it because I wouldn't have met the people that I met. I wouldn't have the podcast. I wouldn't have my, you know, Marco Polo ambassador community. I wouldn't have the ministry. I probably would still maybe have my church community because if I was working as much as I used to, I probably still would be attending the church online. But that's because that's partly why I started doing that before that was because I wasn't able to have the time to. So I'd watch when I could. Um, but I'm grateful that I'm able to do as much as I can, even if it looks different than it used to.
Yeah, and I think people are quick to judge, and for those people, I get it. I do. I think it's that moment that maybe that they're judging something is occurring, but it is okay not to be okay. And I know that those individuals that judge, they have those moments where they're not okay, and they want some
Mhm.
empathy and some grace. And so I always, I think coming through very traumatic things, I mean, I know I have put a different perspective on not knowing what the person next to me is going through, but knowing that they're going through something, not
Mhm.
thinking that their life is just beautiful and all wonderful, because I just don't think that that exists. But I think you being able to grasp that you needed to give yourself grace, and being able to give yourself that self love, and notate and notice that you are worthy and have value and find that, but then also to give yourself those moments to lay in the sunshine and
Mhm.
take a deep breath and recalibrate, and just those moments. I think sometimes we get so caught up in, well, if they're not go 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 go, and I don't consistently seeing them go go go, then they're just mooching off the system, they're mooching off their spouse, whatever. And it's just not that way, but it's hard to swallow. But I think, I've had an opportunity to really kind of take those types of things more with a grain of salt and more humility. I don't know if that's, something that you've done. I think you kind of commented on that, just that humility for others, because no one knows what the person next to them is going through. I mean, you honestly don't. But I think that if we can step into those shoes of giving the person next to us always grace, at any point in time, I know that that helped me make a pivotal transition in my life and how I thought. But I do love that you take those moments just to know that you can't do what you used to be able to do. But man, you have done so much. I can't even get over what you have accomplished. And I can imagine you've had people just gravitate to you for so many reasons. I'm sure that feels amazing to be able, like you said, just to look at that point of view and know that you have brought so many people to you, and that their life is so different because of you. I don't know if you ever had that in those first couple of jobs, or have that feeling like you do now.
It's I did in some ways.
Mhm.
I feel like I've always, maybe not always, but for a while I've always been able to like make friends fairly easily and
Mhm.
make connections. And like I said, if I hear someone say like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this," and I know someone else, like I for a very long time have been the type like, "Hey, like she also goes through that, or she also has a twin brother. Like maybe you guys
Mhm.
should connect. You guys have something in common." So
Mhm.
I don't know why. I guess it's God's, one of his gifts that he gave me, I guess. But I have kind of been that way for a while. I definitely think that it was different. Like at the camp that
Mhm.
I worked at, there was, I don't even know why I started it. I don't even know. But I decided that I wanted to put verses out on this whiteboard out in our dining room. And I would change it out every day and whatever. And I would just, sometimes I'd have a verse that I wanted to share. Sometimes I would just open my Bible and look at the page or whatever and find a verse. And there was one time when the boys camp director, because it was a girls camp and a boys camp, and they were like kind of co-ed in some areas, but then they were on two separate sides of the property as far as like their cabins go. And they also had like different activities that they did separately. But anyways, so the boy camp director had come up to me and was like, hey, you know, this last session at the closing campfire, when this kid stood up and said that one of the biggest impacts on him over the 2 weeks he was there, he might have been there for a month, but either way, the time he was there was the verses in the dining room, and that he had memorized one of them, and that it meant a lot to him and he wanted to recite it. And he recited this verse that I guess he had told the table that he wanted to come up every day to refill the water pitcher because it was right above the sink. And he memorized the verse, and there were lots of people that come up to me and be like, hey, who wrote that verse on there? Because I really needed that today. Or it was confirmation of something that I've been, you know, praying about or thinking about. And so that, I think, was one of the biggest things at the camp I worked at, was just, and I was like, I didn't even think that it was that like impactful to start with. I was just like, oh, I just feel like I need to do this. And I don't know if they still do it, but the last time I visited, they still were changing out the verses. And I was like, that is so cool. And like a lot of the systems, the last time I visited a few years ago, were things that I had come up with to make the job easier. And so it was really neat to be able to see like, hey, I'm no longer here, and these people don't even know me, but they're doing something that I started and they don't even know it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that is super cool. I think we never know what a verse or, you know, a certain song or just something is
Mm-hmm.
going to impact somebody else. I think that there is such purpose in it. And I think that if we don't have things like that, you know, it's, I don't know. I think I'll hear those verses or songs too, I think like other people, and then it will really get me to start thinking about something.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's meant to be, maybe it's what I was supposed to think about, but I just needed a little prompt or probe. But no, I think that that's really cool. I think more places should do that. I think we need to just be offering people that kind of opportunity, but just something different. And it doesn't cost anything to do something like that, you know.
Yeah.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that that was very impactful for you, but also really impactful for people that saw those different verses and had the opportunity to dig a little deeper, you know, get in
Mm-hmm.
tune with, you know, their emotions and maybe what they're going through. And, you know, if it wasn't something that they were, you know, dealing with right now, maybe it was something that they were dealing with, you know, in the past, and it brought something up to maybe then start some healing. I don't know. I think that, you know, there's so many opportunities for those types of, you know, scriptures and, you know, putting a passage up or just putting some sort of statement up. So that's cool. Well, awesome. I guess, you know, what kind of advice would you give people who maybe are going through what you were going through in the beginning with your, you know, chronic pain, and then having to make these huge decisions of what to do, you know, with your life because, you know, you couldn't still do what you were doing. I mean, when you look back, I mean, what does that look like in advice that you would give people that are struggling right now?
I would say that one thing, and it's interesting because my pastor literally like was preaching on this yesterday. But one thing that I have tried to do, and looking back, I can realize that was really helpful for me, was to, even though I'm a planner, I'm very much a planner, um, but to try not to focus too much on this is what I'm gonna do, and in like 5 years, or this is whatever. Like everything snowballs, like bad decisions, good decisions, no decisions. And so I think for me, when I was really sick and I felt like I had to come up with this big purpose, like I don't have this purpose at camp anymore. I don't have this purpose at the pub I'm working at. I can't do all these things that I used to be able to do. I need to come up with this big grand thing that I need to start so that
Mhm.
I can then do this. And I think that the small
Mhm.
things I did, like literally just inviting a couple women to a group, then snowballed into part of my purpose now.
Yeah.
And, you know, deciding to comment back to people in a group for my church then snowballed into me volunteering in many different ways because they saw that I was praying for people, I was answering people's questions, whatever it may be. Like, I think that sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to know what we're going to be doing in 5 years, 10 years. And I think that our purpose shifts. And sometimes your purpose for today is just to be and just to get to the next day. For those that are chronically ill, don't always feel like you have to be doing something when you feel good. Like sometimes, or something productive, I guess I should say, because that is one thing that I've struggled with is on like my better days. Like I said, reading, I was not able to do for a long time. And I took time to read in the sunshine, refill my cup. And it was really hard for me at first to do that. And sometimes I still have my moments, but I felt so guilty. Like, I feel fairly good right now. I should be deep cleaning the house. I should be doing X, Y, and Z instead. That's productive. Well, you know what? Filling my cup is productive. And even though somebody may, like I said, may look at that and be like, oh, well, she's got a tan. So all she does is lay out in the sun and her husband works hard and she's just, pretending. And you don't have to, like I said, do something productive. Like if you are chronically ill, take advantage sometimes of those good days and do something that fills your cup. And it's not selfish. And it's something that we should be doing because those people that aren't chronically ill, they do fun stuff. And, maybe they do feel guilty for whatever reason, but they shouldn't. And neither should we, just because we can't always do productive things or can't always do fun stuff. And also to listen to your body and realize that your limit, because that was something I think part of why I was as sick as I was and it got as bad as it was, not only because I didn't have answers and I was doing things that I didn't know could contribute to migraines because I didn't know that's what it was, but I didn't listen to my body as much because I just kept pushing because I felt like that's what I had to do to be worth something, was to push myself to the breaking point. So then I could justify in my head, well, now I have to rest because I feel like garbage. Or they kicked me out of the kitchen because I felt so crappy. Like what I should have been doing was telling my boss, hey, I just fainted. I need to go lay down, not continue to push myself. And I know sometimes, we have to do that in some degree. But I think that it's important to realize that you don't have to reach your breaking point and continue that cycle because you're never going to get better mentally, physically, if that's all you do is to push yourself to the breaking point, fall down, and then pick yourself back up. Like you're never going to get any higher if you keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's tremendous advice and a tremendous way to just let people give themselves grace today and moving forward and know that they are valued no matter what they're doing. So I think that's wonderful. I think it's what we need. And I think it's a great way to, definitely start the new year of people, that could be a great, goal. People don't have to have these huge goals. So I think that's fantastic. Well, Abigail, where can people find you? I know that there's probably numerous things they can check out. What's the easiest way, or what are a couple ways that people can find you?
So as far as if anyone wanted to check out the ministry, that is SIC, so all caps, and then the and symbol, and MIC, again in all caps, ministries. We're on Facebook, and we also have a couple Instagrams, but I don't utilize those as much. So we have a Facebook page, and then linked to the Facebook page is all of our groups. There's also our website, which has a list of all our messenger support groups and different things about us and what we offer. My podcast is called Beautiful Legacy, and it's spelled BEYOUTIFUL. So on Instagram, it's beautiful_legacy. And that would probably be the best way to contact me personally, because that's an Instagram that I try and utilize with people that I make different connections with. And I post about the podcast, of course, but I also sometimes post like a little bit about my life too. Like yesterday I watched the movie Wicked and did some diamond art and I put that in my stories. Like I try and do some personal stuff on there because I want people to still, get to know me and feel like it's relatable. But it also is like a big thing to post about upcoming episodes and things like that.
That's great. I'll also, for those that don't catch it, I'll also put that on the site where they can find you. So they really have a good opportunity to look you up. And I think just get involved. I'm sure they can find something that they will relate to and really just be, I don't know, just inspired by. You're a huge inspiration. It's so cool. I'm really glad we were able to do this because it's a long time coming, but I think everything happens for a reason. I know that it was needed right now, especially like I said, once again, we start this new year, give yourself some new goals and yeah, make it a great year. So Abigail, thank you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure to have you on here and for you to give and be so open, raw, and real to tell your story. One is huge, and we really appreciate your openness because it's not easy to talk about things, like this. And I want other people to know that it's okay to open up and it's okay to tell your story. I mean, the greatest gift we have in life, I think, is to be able to share our stories. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Advocacy and hope. If you are struggling today, I think today's podcast will give you a really good opportunity to just find some relatability, find those, around you, find those groups, just get involved. Don't stay silent. Don't stay alone. If you know of somebody that's going through something hard, the easiest thing you can do today is just reach out to them, ask them how they're doing, or say, hey, can I do something? Maybe even not ask how they're doing, just ask if you can do something to help them. And I think it will be a pivotal movement in your life as well as theirs. Just do something great. I mean, the person next to you is going through something. You just don't know what it is. So guys, thank you. We really appreciate you all the time. And I can't wait to really just start seeing you more this year. And, we'll do this advocacy and hope together. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.